Namaste, welcome, thanks for being here. Take a moment in the seat of your choice, any kind of seat will do, just to settle in. Take the opportunity to arrive in the space that you've set up for yourself. Allow yourself to breathe into that space. So if it works for you, you can bring your hands to your heart or touch your body somewhere along the way, hand at heart, hand at belly, whatever works. And let your gaze at the very least drop. And if you feel comfortable doing so, you can also close your eyes. Sink a little heavier into the sitting bone surface of your seat. Notice what you notice in your body without attempting to change or fix anything. Just notice where you are. Allow your jaw to become soft and easy. Place the tip of your tongue right behind your upper teeth. You make this deliberate connection between your tongue and your hard palate. And imagine the two poles of your soft palate and of your pelvic floor being tugged away from each other a little bit. Give yourself some length through that. In between those two poles, imagine your diaphragm dropping out of your rib cage into your organs to draw your lungs full of breath. And perhaps your expression changes for a moment and brightens, lightens. And right where you are in this moment, breathe in. If your hands are at your heart, let them drop away. Start to open up your eyes. And then move down to your belly. So you're going to lie down on your belly. And when you initially go there, you can stack your hands one on top of the other. And either bring your forehead or your chin to rest at that place. Wherever you feel like you have the most comfort and space in your neck. And then once you've landed, put your attention back on your breath. Allow your belly to really meet the floor every time you breathe in. So you feel the resistance given to you by the floor. And you breathe into it without force, without pushing, without overexerting. And you move slowly into the resistance that the floor creates. Remembering that breathing happens through a muscular contraction, and the muscular contraction of your diaphragm. And when you breathe into the floor and there's resistance there, when you breathe into anything and there's resistance there, you tone the muscle a little bit. And the muscle doesn't need to or want to be toned a lot. It just needs to be toned a little bit. It's a way of reminding it of its potential, reminding it of its job. And that starts to create a little massage in your low back. Because of that resistance, when your organs need to drop out of the way, they're still dropping out of the way, but there's, instead of a spreading forward, there's a feeling of spreading back. They're not spreading back, but it feels as though they start to spread back. And if you can imagine more room across your low back, across your QL muscles, giving them some more space to release any extra tension. Stay here with your hands stacked for another couple of rounds of breath. Good. And then start to prop up to your elbows. So you come into more of a sphinx shape. And that might mean that your elbows are right under your shoulders, or maybe slightly forward of your shoulders. So if you feel like when you come to your elbows that your low back suddenly doesn't have that space anymore, then move your elbows a little bit forward. Right? And then continue with this attention on your breath. You've added a little back bend, right? And if you're up on your elbows, also change where your gaze goes. So at the very least, see just beyond your fingernails. Maybe 2 or 3 feet in front of that can still be on the floor. You may even see the molding at the base of a wall or the wall itself. If ever it feels like strain in your neck or too much work, then just drop it a degree or so. Slowly build the capacity and the potential to have your gaze out to the horizon. Remember that little connection that you made with your tongue to your hard palate right behind your upper teeth. See if you can keep that. Notice the undulating quality that starts to show up in your breath pattern. How you might be more aware of the full-bodied experience of breath. If ever your arms start to fatigue being up on your elbows, then you can go back down to resting your head on your hands for sure. But you can add some purposeful action to your arms if they're here underneath you by pressing the floor away, down further below you, but also forward away from you. Just enough to keep your shoulders off your ears. And enjoy the simplicity of breathing. Notice what you notice in that space. Still feel a little resistance as less of your belly meets the floor, but still having that connection around your belly button. Good. One more moment here. And then you can narrow your hands closer, widen your elbows wider, and then come back down to rest. So either chin or your forehead, maybe a cheek, to rest on the ground. Feel a little curling inward of your tailbone toward your pubic bone. Not squeezing the muscles of your bum and not really tucking anything, but just anchoring the front side of your pelvis into the mat so you feel more length through your lumbar spine. One last breath there. And then come back up onto your elbows. And if you haven't been on your elbows yet, check it out. I'm going to have this same position with my elbows under my shoulders. And I'm going to imagine my spine, my head, a little bit like a metronome. And then I'm going to tick-tock from side to side. And if you're ever unsure, just peek at the screen. But I'm just tick-tocking from side to side. But the thing that I'm not doing is moving my hips. So I'm not trying to move my hips here, but it's weight exchange elbow to elbow. Just rocking. And it's also not just tick-tocking my head. So notice if your head is tick-tocking, but your shoulders are not. Think about it changing laterally, shoulder to shoulder, side, 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 side. And the speed is whatever the speed is for you. So it might be side, side, side. But if you can have a little bit of freedom in the rock, just going side to side, waking up your outer shoulders. When you keep the energy down through your elbows, you'll start to feel some heat on the back of your upper arms. Notice when you've lost your gaze out toward that potential horizon. And then you can start to add some turns of your head. So you can look toward your left shoulder, back to center. And then you can look over by your right shoulder, back to center. And then you switch that, and every time you see a shoulder, maybe you see a little past it. So you might start to catch a glimpse of your hip out of the corner of your eye. Maybe you see a little bit of your own heel bone. Find a rhythm with the head turn that makes sense for you, right? One where you don't have to think about it, where it kind of does it by itself. It's certainly slower than the rocking, so I'm not moving my head as much as I'm moving my shoulders. And you may or may not have done this movement in a long time, but I guarantee you've done it, because we've all done it at some point. Most of us did it right before we learned how to crawl. So maybe it's been a while. Watch out for dropping your gaze as you turn. So when you're moving through the middle, try not to look at the floor. So when you move through the middle, look forward and then look around. So you find the horizon, and then you peek toward the horizon behind you, and then the horizon in front of you, and then the horizon behind you. Keep this going a little bit more. Rocking, rocking. And by making sure you don't drop your gaze in the middle, usually that means you find more rotation. Right? There's more potential in the range of motion there. So peek left one last time. Peek right one more time. Come back to the middle, and then slow the rock and come down to rest. So you can rest on your forehead, you can rest on your chin. If it was helpful, you can curl in a little bit with your tail so you anchor into the front side of your pelvis more to the ground. Finding a bit more length through your low back. Good. And then you can do the next part in that same position, so you can sphinx your arms again, or if you're tired of sphinx, you can sit back on your heels, right? And then it's just going to take the nod of your head up to a point, and then down to a point. So I'm looking up comfortably, seeing the wall in front, looking down underneath me, seeing my chest. And then moving with that, and you can coordinate it with your breathing so that your inhale might take you in one direction and your exhale might take you in the other. Sometimes you'll find that the inhale can take you through both motions, followed by an exhale that can take you through both motions. If ever when you're doing head movement this way, you get a little dizzy, make more deliberate blinks of your eyes. So you blink more often and more deliberately. And a lot of times that will help with any kind of dizziness that shows up. But you do want your eyes to be open because you're stimulating your vestibular system, which you can do with your eyes closed, but you get a little bit more bang for your buck if you do it with your eyes open, just because your eyes take in so much information of the change of position. Right? And the vestibular system is the oldest system, so one that forms pretty early after conception. If I remember correctly, it's somewhere around 31 days. So it's really, it's an ancient system of the body, right? But it's the one that gives us a lot of information that helps us balance. And as a result of being one of the oldest systems, it also fatigues along the way, but mostly we stop using it in the same kind of way. We stop stimulating it. And so we start to lose our balance a little bit more with age. But you can stimulate your vestibular system at any age to help regain some of that balance. A few more nods here. Good. And then take a rest on the floor one last time. So there's no more sphinx, right? So you don't have to worry about that warmth in the back of your arms anymore. Allow yourself to sink into the ground. Notice what you notice now after having some amount of movement, some amount of attention paid to your breath. Notice what's the same. Notice what's changed. And give yourself one more breath right there. Good. And then you can just peek at the screen for a sec. I'm going to show you this next thing that we're going to do. I'm going to take my arms out long in front of me like a superhero. And while I'm on my belly, I'm going to move my pelvis a little side to side. And that just kind of takes away some of that feeling of being stuck. Right? And then I'm going to lift my head to look up. Right? And then in that looking up, I have to decide which way I want to go. So because I'm going to roll onto my left side, I'm going to look to the right. So I looked up and around the right, but I'm just going to come back down, move my pelvis. Then I'll look up over to the left and let my weight fall to the right. So I have this long arm, and then I'm trying to see what's up on the ceiling, right? And it's all happening with my head. So that when I take that a little bit further and I lift my head, I look over to the right toward the ceiling, I allow that to roll me onto my side so I can see the ceiling. So I'm not on my back, I'm just moving in that direction so I can see the ceiling. And then I'll lift my head, see my left hand, and go back to my belly, right? Head up, lift, look, and let my limbs follow that. And then look and follow that. Okay? So rolling from side to side from your belly. But the thing that will want to happen, because it's natural, is to try to move. You're going to start trying to move limbs first, right? Limbs go second, right? So your head, your gaze, body, limbs. Head, gaze, body, limbs. Okay? And we'll just go in one direction first. So lift your gaze, look over past your right shoulder toward the ceiling, feel your body tipping left, and then just let it happen. So you roll onto your left side, you have a little bend in your right knee. Lift your gaze, see your left hand, and slither out onto your belly there. Same direction, lift your head, look to the right, try to see the ceiling, let that pull you over onto your hip. Maybe you feel your right shoulder getting heavy. Lift your gaze. See the floor out in front by your fingers. Go around. Lift your head. See some ceiling. Roll in that direction. Maybe your right hand lands at your heart. Lift your head. See where you want to go to your belly. And go. And continue moving just in that direction. From your belly toward your back. From your back onto your belly. Head, body, limbs. Maybe your right arm opens out. Head, body, limbs. Move as though your right arm, in this case, is asleep, and it's just dead weight. Again, you've done this before, but it may have been a while, right? When you learned how to move from your belly to your back, this is what you did. Notice your head and keep your head in the driver's seat. There's so often in these practices that we want to turn off our head, but that's the thinking, that's the thought process, right? But through nodding your head, you gain some control. And then when you get some control of your head, you can use your head to control the rest of your body. Belly to side toward your back. A few more times in this direction. Your right arm might not even come all the way over, but your gaze can go past your right shoulder and you can see the floor behind your right shoulder blade. Go that way one last time. Hopefully you feel the potential, get back to your belly and pause, of that roll continuing where you could go belly to your back and keep rolling in that same direction to your belly again and onto your back, the way that you used to kind of roll down the hill at your neighborhood, right? And then arms out long again, you're going to go the other way now. So when you lift your gaze, you look over to the left toward the ceiling. Let your head get heavy toward the floor and tumble with it. Lift your gaze, see your right hand, roll to your belly. Lift your head, see the ceiling. Let your head get heavy toward the floor, roll with it. Toward your belly. Toward your back. So the movement starts with your head. It is going to be so tempting to throw a leg over first, to try to make a leg work, to press a hand, right? That when you start to move toward your back, you'll feel that familiar sensation of going toward a back twist, a twist on your back, and you'll want to move your arm. Try not to let that happen. And there's a reflex response, especially when you're going from your back around to your belly. You can feel the righting reflex. That's natural, right? The way that a cat has its tail. We have a righting reflex that happens around our head and neck. And you probably roll over this way at some point in the middle of the night, where your head shifts so your body can shift to a new position. Last few times. Last couple. Good, and when you land on your belly, pause. Notice the difference. You can always bring your hands underneath your head. Notice the difference from having moved in a familiar / forgotten / unfamiliar kind of way. Notice where you have tension, where you might not have had tension before, and let that be information, right? Information that tells you where you turn on, where you might not need to turn on, or when you turn on places that you haven't turned on in a while. And then hands by your chest so you can press toward all fours. And then if you have a couple of blankets, bring them onto your mat. And I'm going to thicken these a little bit. So this is, I usually find them on, you can also use a bolster here, right, rather than blankets. Usually find them kind of like this on a stack. And if you just thicken that one time, each of those, so they just become a little bit thicker. And then you can stack them so they become almost like a bolster. And then once that's down in the middle of your space, you're going to lie down on top of that. So you want to have your pelvis supported by the back end of the bolster or the folded blankets, but your chest is just a little bit forward of it. So my breastbone, just the very tip of my breastbone is meeting this stack. And then when you get there, cactus arms. So you've got this sort of frog cactus shape and just easy, non-specific legs back there. And you can drop your forehead for a moment just to be in that space. A little room across your upper back. You might feel the muscles telling you that you've been holding your head up, right? And that you've been supporting your head with the muscles. Those muscles behind your heart that help with your natural posture. And then begin to lift your head up so you see what's in front of you. And stretch your right arm until it's long out in front of you, like there's something you're trying to reach. You saw it, you're reaching for it. And then pull your right arm back into that place where it's a cactus. Reach your left arm forward, something's out of reach. And then draw it back. And then you can continue that way, one arm and the other, but your gaze is forward. You can also add to it, right? So as my right fingers reach forward, I'm pulling my left knee toward my left elbow. And then I'll pull everything back to the starting place. My left arm goes forward and my right knee slides close to my right elbow. And then that goes back. And then you switch that side to side. And you might feel how it overlaps. So as I'm changing from one side, my body tilts and I reach. and they reach. And maybe your elbow actually touches your knee. Maybe it doesn't. Sometimes, if while you're reaching, you can look at your elbow toward your knee, and that might encourage it to touch. You can also keep your gaze forward. Feels a little bit like a very slow motion dog paddle. But think of it as a crawling pattern. Crawling like a lizard. Close to the ground. Coordinating your limbs. And of course your knee can always slide. If you're wearing shorts and you're on a rug, you might get a little uncomfortable along the way, but you can always slide, or you can really feel that knee lifting toward the elbow. And that'll turn on some of the muscles in your waist. Few more times here. You can always do this one on any surface. You don't have to be propped up. You can do it flat on the floor. Sometimes that makes moving your knees a little bit more challenging. You could also do this lying in your bed if you've got space. One more reach for each side. Good. And then return to that cactus arm, lazy leg, non-specific, and just relax down. And you can move across your forehead, across your eyebrows a little bit. Tilting your head. And spend another breath here resting. Good. And then hands by your shoulders, by your chest. Curl under your toes. Press yourself through all fours. And then you can move your blankets out of the way. And then we're going to combine those two ideas, right? So you were crawling like a salamander, and before that you were rolling back and forth, right? So if you put the two things together, so just watch for a moment. You can start in Sphinx, and that might be an easier place, and again, just watch for a sec. And then when I roll to my side, so I'm on my right elbow, my right hip, I touch my left elbow to my left knee. It's like, yes, they scored, right? And then you roll back over, right? And then I'll stay in that same direction, so I look, touch, and roll back as my eyes guide me there. And then I can add to that again, look, elbow touch, and then I sit up. I look, elbow, touch before you go, down. Look, elbow, up. Elbow, look, and go. So you're adding this roll and the coordination of your limbs together, okay? And you can always stop in the first stage, right? You doesn't have to progress. But start here on your hips, on your belly. See if you can come into a little bit of a sphinx. You can do this with long arms. It requires a little bit more strength around your waist to get up. So you can try it both ways. And then when you look to your left, you roll onto your right elbow. Touch your left elbow to your left knee. Look down at your mat, and then return to your belly. Try that again. As you look to your left, you roll to your right elbow. Left elbow to your left knee. Look down to your mat. Return to your belly. One more time with just that. Look over your left shoulder. Left elbow to your left knee. Look to your mat. Roll it down. So keep that if it's best. Or roll to your right elbow as you look over your left shoulder. Touch your left knee and your left elbow together. Let your left leg lengthen out and sit on up. Drop your right elbow. Touch your left elbow to your left knee. Look to the floor. Belly. Roll as you look. Left elbow, left knee. Sitting up. Elbow to knee. Other elbow to the floor. Look and go. And then perhaps you find a rhythm with it, so it feels somewhat seamless. And if it doesn't feel seamless, back up a stage, right? Back up to the place where you can create a seamless sense of movement, like you can feel the roll rather than feeling the steps, rather than feeling the mechanical dots. Where you can feel your head guiding you. So it might be just rolling and touching. Or it might be the whole turn, touch, sit. A few more times on this side. Often what gets forgotten is either looking first or on the way back down, the elbow to knee touch. Good. The next time that you're on your belly, stop there. And pause. You might drop your head for a moment. You can stay on your elbows and let's just let your head get heavy. Or you can come all the way down before we start on the second side. And again, these could go side to side seamlessly, but sometimes it's nice just to feel one side, get used to the idea of it. Okay? So if you're down, come back up to your elbows. You start to push into your left elbow, look to your right. Right elbow to your knee, just that much. Look down to roll down. Look to your right, lean into your left, touch your right knee, right elbow. And back down you go. And the actual touch of your elbow and your knee need not actually happen. So I might just move them in the direction. They might not actually touch, right? Keep that if it's best, or as you look and roll and touch, let your leg then stretch out to sit yourself up. And then you can look and touch to go back down. Looking around, touching there, so that as you're looking, you're already touching, so you make contact without having to see. And so a little stimulation of also your proprioception. You can feel the movement through your leg as you're looking over, like the tail of a lizard. It kind of goes whoosh, whoosh, when you're going from your belly toward your side. And it all starts up at your head. Right, this sense of movement of your head triggering the tail, in this case your leg. A few more times. Find one last roll. And then when you get to your belly, take a rest. You can lie down completely and let everything drop. From here on out, it's mostly relaxing, right? But feel what you feel. Feel what's different than when you began. For me, there's usually a little buzzy feeling, right? Life where there might not have been any life. Maybe just feeling more awake. Give yourself one more exhale here on the floor. And then through all fours, so your hands can press by your sides, coming up to all fours. You're moving to child's pose next, right? So I think some support is nice, whether that's a bolster or some folded blankets down the center of your mat. You can widen out your knees. And really, if you can, if your knees are willing to bend into this depth, find the heaviness of your hips towards your heels before you start to bow down, right? So you find that heaviness, keep that heaviness as you come out long, adjusting what's there, so that whatever is supporting you also supports your hips and your head and shoulders being at a similar height. And then when you get down there, you can turn your head to the side. So I like sort of halo arms, so my hands reach in front, my elbows can drop down, because that gives me a sense of space across my upper back. Right? If your arms need to be more cactus-shaped, totally possible. If your arms need to go back by your side, so you can go to the backs of your hands, so your hands end up next to your ankles or thereabouts, you can also be there. Especially with the prop underneath you, having your head to the side just makes it easier to breathe. It doesn't feel like you're squishing your face. Choosing where you can land. So that you can be. Reconnecting, if you've lost it, to that movement of your breath that feels like you can meet the ground with your inhale. So in this case, you might feel like your front ribs, middle abdomen can really drop against the bolster or the stack of blankets, maybe the ground or maybe your thighs. So there's this resistance. And the kind of resistance that serves you. Right? Our bodies respond and are made to respond to resistance. We grow and develop when we meet the resistance, which doesn't mean going to your edge. So I don't want that to be misheard. Or going to a place of pain. But just going to that place of time under tension. Right? There's a lot of growth that happens there. Whether that's literal physical growth or muscle growth, bone density growth, mental growth, respiratory growth. All the systems benefit to meeting the resistance with a curiosity, absence of aggression. If you've been on one side of your face for a while, you can flip to the other side. Feel how your back body rises a little bit when you breathe in. And stay here for a few more breaths. Give yourself one more inhale. Let it sink into the floor as it leaves. Pull your hands back alongside your shoulders. Center out your head. Press the ground away. Lengthening through your arms. You can move your body a little side to side. If there's a prop there, you can start to take it across the mat. Coming off your seat. You'll need a block next. I'm going to have just one blanket, so you can also do this with a bolster. I'm going to open it up and roll the short side of it into a little burrito. And then I'm going to have my block up at the head end of my mat. So use this blanket or whatever you're using against your right ribs when you lie down. So my right hip is on the floor, my right shoulder's on the floor. Then I'm going to take my right arm out away from me, so I'm really down on my right outer shoulder. And it's nice with the blanket because then my head drop isn't too low. So I can be here in this side lying pose. It shortens one side of my waist a little bit, lengthens out the other. And just be here, right? And then it might be that this is the best place to stay. Or you can pancake your left hand on top of your right hand when you're ready, or maybe it's more like on top of your wrist. But find that place where you're truly on your side, not rolling toward your back, not rolling toward your front. And then you can keep the pancake position of your left palm on top, or simply lift your left hand up away from your right hand, like you're holding a beach ball between your two palms there. And then begin to move your left arm. So you move your left arm alongside your left ear or thereabouts. Feel what's possible in your range of motion. And then bring it back so that your left palm hovers above your right palm. And then move in that direction alongside your ear. And notice what wants to help. So is your right arm suddenly pressing into the floor to try to help your left arm move? And then move back to where you started. And this last time, as your left arm moves, see if your left palm can land on top of your block. So I've got my block at the tall height. And I want to be able to rest my palm on the block with my arm fully extended, thereabouts, right? So both arms long, moving in different directions. My right arm still cutting across, my left arm reaching up and over toward the block, right? Take your right hand now and touch your left armpit, right? And there's a hollow in the middle of the pit, and then there's two ridges. One ridge at the side that is your chest, and one ridge toward the side that is your back. And that ridge toward your back is where I want you to touch your fingers. Right where you are without changing in the shape, press your left hand against the block if you've got it, or against the floor if you don't, and feel underneath your fingertips that muscle ridge at the edge of your armpit where your fingers are becoming a little bit more active. Shouldn't be dramatic. But keep pressing the block down like you're trying to make the block flatten down, like it's the marshmallow in the s'more. And then release that tension, but keep your arm there. pause. Notice if now where your fingers are touching your outer armpit, if the muscles softened a little bit. And then press the block again and see if you can get that muscle to fire. Right? Firing your latissimus dorsi. And then soften that. Notice the muscles softened. And then one last time, press the block into the ground. And it's anywhere from 5% of your effort, maybe as much as 50% of your effort. Shouldn't be all of your effort. Shouldn't be a struggle, because then it's going to start turning on places around your neck that you don't need to turn on. Your neck will fire a little bit, but you don't want it to start taking over. And then soften the action. See if you can peel your left hand off the block. So you're just working in the opposite direction energetically. And then return both arms to that pancake position, palm on top of palm. Give yourself a breath all the way in and out. And then you can put a bend into your left elbow so you can flatten your left palm against the floor. Roll toward your belly to lean into your left hand to help yourself up to sit. And then change sides. So you can simply roll to the other side. I'm going to move a little bit so I can continue to see you. And then you're going down on your side so your left ribs drape over your prop. Let your left arm come down so your left shoulder, outer edge, the shield of the deltoid, can really rest against the floor. And you can drop your head, nice soft bend in your knees, and then you can pancake your two hands on top of each other. And then play in that range of motion. So you can lift your right hand away from your left hand. So there's that imaginary beach ball. And then let your right arm start to move alongside your head. And notice if you're pressing your head into the floor to make that possible. And then move it back so you have the beach ball. And reach alongside your head. Notice what's pressing, what's getting active, where there's compensation. Bring it back to the beach ball. And then the next time that you reach over, see if your palm can land on the block. You can always tent your fingers on the floor, and it never has to be a block. I mean, it could be anything that you have lying around, close proximity, a few books. And then once you're there, your left fingers can find your armpit, so left fingers to your right armpit. Find the back ridge of muscle. And then press the block into the floor. Notice if there's a difference to the definition of the muscle on this side. Right. Or if there was a dramatic difference with the definition on the other side, however you want to think about it. But pressing the block down. And then soften the effort. Notice the change in the muscle. Right? So your lats will definitely fire, but your pectoral muscle will also fire in there. And when you're not pushing down, there'll still be some action, but just not as dramatic. Press the block down. Whenever there's strain or discomfort, back off the effort. Notice with the compensation where you shift, try to make something happen that doesn't necessarily want to happen. Release the pressure. And then give yourself one more time to press the block. Smush the marshmallow. Turning on the outside of your armpit, a little bit of the front of your chest. And then soften the pressure. Both hands pancaking on each other. Good. And then your right hand can start to move down to the floor. Roll some weight in that direction. Press your right palm down. Ease yourself up slowly. So keep whatever is going across your mat. I'm going to add a second blanket that is rolled the same way. If you have a bolster and a blanket, you can change it so the bolster is at the bottom. But I'm going to add a second little roll. So that it's making kind of a plus sign on the mat, right? And then once I've got that plus sign, I'm going to sit on it so that my hips are on the lower edge. And then when I recline back, I want the top roll to fit right into my spine, but leaving room for my shoulders to drop to the floor. And I can press the ground with my feet so my hips lift up a little bit, play with the position of how my pelvis lands on that setup. Open up your arms toward a T, and then maybe your legs rather stretch out. All right? And you want to feel like the front side of your pelvis is open. Your pelvis is elevated, so it's the highest point of the shape. So you have this opening across your heart, a subtle but hopefully delicious back bend. And maybe your arms are in a full-on T. Maybe your arms are a bit more cactused. Maybe your arms are more toward an inverted V. So they can go lower so there's more release. And Josie, just make sure that your chin doesn't feel like it's moving too far away from your chest. So you might tuck a palm underneath your skull for a moment. And just support that and let your head get heavy there for just a moment. So you feel your chin get a little closer to your chest. And then when you're slipping your palm out, pull up toward the top of your head, like you're sliding a ponytail out of the way. So you land more on the flatter part of the occiput, the backside of your skull. You don't want to feel like your chin is pinned to your chest, but you want to feel like it's pretty close. Feel the melting from the high point, from about your belly to the top of your pelvis. Think of that as the high point. And then in two directions, your body melts, right? So toward your head and shoulders is a water falling. Toward your thighs and toes is a different water falling, kind of going over this ridge. You're not getting out of the shape just yet, unless you need to, right? But when we start to leave the shape, important that your head stays heavy to the ground, right? You don't want to lift your head to start getting up. Because when you start trying to lift your head, all the muscles on the front side of your body that are being stretched open right now are going to try to contract. And they're not going to like it. And then you'll have a sensation across your back that you're not going to like. To keep your head nice and heavy, stay here for 3 more exhales. Know in your mind which way you might want to roll to get out of this. I'm going to be rolling to my right. So that means I'm going to place my left hand on my chest. And I'm going to slowly bend my left knee so my left foot comes flat to the floor. Look toward whatever arm is long. So for me, that's my right arm. Press into whatever knee is bent so that foot can press the ground. And just tumble over to your side. So the whole time I stayed close to the ground. And then whenever you get to your side, you can curl that into more of a fetal position, letting your thighs come in closer to your belly. Creates a roundness in your back. Right? You can tuck your chin into your chest. Back to a place before we had the distinct curves in our spine. One last moment there. And then you can use your hands to help you come up. Take away one blanket, keep the other. And we're going to finish up here. So now is where the strap comes into play, if you have the strap, right? If your strap isn't quite as big as the strap that I have, you might just leave the strap out. There are options, right? When I'm sitting, I'm going to lay the strap on my lap for a moment. I'm going to unfold my blanket so it really is completely unfolded. I'm going to lay it over my toes there for a moment. And then even tuck it under my heels. So my heels are on the floor, my heels are pinning down the blanket, and then my feet are kind of hiding inside there. I'm just going to let that drop for a moment. And then hook the strap around my feet. And keep the other end across my lap. And then I'm going to pull the blanket over my toes, so they kind of get warm there. And I'll hold onto the strap just so it doesn't slip away, whoops, or come undone. That can happen. So that when I start to recline back, I'm going to let my feet go up to the ceiling so the strap is still there, right? Hiding my feet. And now I can take the strap and put it behind my skull. Just make sure you're not putting the buckle behind your head, because that's not going to feel good. And then when it goes behind my skull, my legs end up being slightly less vertical. A little smaller angle. And you're creating a little fort for yourself to hide in. So the buckle shouldn't feel like it, or that strap shouldn't feel like it's pulling on my head. My head is totally flat to the floor. And because I've got this blanket draped over, I kind of block out the world. Only blocking out the world was that easy, right? And then you can settle in here in your little cocoon, in your little fort. And let your arms lay out long. Hopefully the strap really supports the shape of your legs. Right? So if you're without a strap, you could always go over to a wall and put your legs up the wall. If you're without a blanket, you could just cover your eyes with something. The fort's nice, though. I like the fort. Allowing yourself to hide for a little while. And as you're hiding, you can recommit to your breathing. I'm fully aware that just because it feels restful to me doesn't mean that it has to feel restful to you. So if this feels restful, this is your resting shape. If this feels less than restful, then you can settle down onto your back and take a more traditional rest in Shavasana, or you can have your knees bent. If you choose to transition with as little fuss as possible, right? So you could just slip the strap away from your scalp, away from your hair, and then slowly let everything come down so you stay covered, at least partially. Dropping into yourself. And dropping totally into the moment. Be where you are for a few more breaths. And then start to bring a little life back to your body. Fingers, toes. You can bend and wiggle and shift where you are. before eventually finding your way out of your shape and onto your seat. And then your hands can either come back to your belly and your heart, or you can press your palms together in front of your heart. And your chin bow toward your prayer, expressing some gratitude for the time spent together, honoring the divine in one another, celebrating the light that we share. We are one love, we are one life, and we are one light.